You've probably made a decision before and everything went wrong. And what did you think? I messed up. Simple, clean, wrong. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Just because the outcome was bad doesn't mean the decision was. And somehow that feels illegal. Hello, and welcome back to Bookworm. Today we're diving into Thinking in Bets, a book that completely flips the way we judge decisions. We've been trained to think in a very simple system. Good decision leads to good result, bad decision leads to bad result, nice, logical, satisfying, also completely unrealistic. Because real life doesn't care about your logic. Sometimes you do everything right and still lose, and sometimes people make terrible decisions and somehow win. And that's where things get confusing because we don't judge decisions based on thinking, we judge them based on results, which means we reward luck and punish good judgment. Great system, right? This book introduces a different way of thinking. Treat every decision like a bet, not a guarantee, not certainty, a bet. Stay with me as we dive deeper, because once you understand this shift, you'll start seeing your past decisions very differently. And if you enjoy content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe.
So, how do you make a really great decision when you just don't have all the facts? I mean, it's a huge challenge we all face, right? Today, we're going to dive into the powerful mental models from former pro poker player Annie Duke's amazing book, Thinking in Bets, to figure out how we can all make smarter choices in a world that's, well, pretty much defined by uncertainty. Picture this. It's the 2015 Super Bowl. There are 26 seconds left on the clock. The Seattle Seahawks are on the 1-yard line, down by 4 against the New England Patriots. They've got Marshawn Lynch, a running back who's basically a human wrecking ball. The entire world, literally everyone, expects them to just hand him the ball. But instead, Coach Pete Carroll calls a pass, and it's intercepted. Just like that, game over. The media went absolutely nuts, calling it the dumbest call in Super Bowl history. And that moment, it gets right to the heart of what we're talking about today. See, when we see a terrible outcome, our gut reaction is to immediately blame the decision that led to it. But what if that's a huge mistake? What if the result isn't the whole story?
Okay, section 1, the worst call ever? Let's actually go beyond the crazy headlines and really look at the decision itself.
So this is where what our gut tells us totally clashes with the cold, hard data. Just look at the probabilities here. An interception from the 1-yard line is incredibly, incredibly rare. In that entire season, there had been 0 interceptions in 66 similar plays across the league. Historically, the rate was only about 2%. This means the most likely things to happen were either a game-winning touchdown or an incomplete pass, which would have stopped the clock and given them another shot. The terrible result we all remember was, statistically speaking, the least likely thing to happen.
Pete Carroll, and basically everyone criticizing him, got caught in a mental trap that poker players have a great name for, resulting. It's our brain's lazy shortcut of judging a decision based entirely on how it turned out. The play failed, so the call had to be dumb. But as we just saw, the probabilities, they tell a completely different story.
All right, section 2, life is poker, not chess. Now, to escape this resulting trap, we need a completely new way of looking at how the world works. Man, this is such a powerful idea. We want life to be like chess, right? It's a game of perfect information, you can see the whole board, there's no luck involved. If you lose, it's because you got outplayed, pure and simple. But the thing is, life is so much more like poker. There's a ton of hidden information, things you just can't know. There's a massive element of luck. You can make the absolute best, most calculated play and still lose the hand because of the turn of a card. So here's the big takeaway from that. Every single choice we make, from taking a new job to picking a major in college, even deciding what to have for lunch, is a bet. We're betting that the future version of us that comes from that choice will be better off than all the other future versions that would have happened if we'd chosen something else. We are constantly wagering our time, our money, and our happiness on an outcome that's probable but never, ever certain.
Okay, section 3. Why our brains get fooled. So if thinking in bets and probabilities is so much more effective, why does it feel so unnatural? Why are we so bad at it? Let's make this personal for a quick second. Just take a moment and think about what you'd call your worst decision from the last year or so. Got it? Okay.
I'm willing to bet that decision was followed by a really, really bad result. But now I want you to look back at the process. What you knew at the time, the options you had on the table. Was the decision itself really that flawed? Or did you just get unlucky? This is where resulting's nasty cousin, hindsight bias, sneaks in. The moment we know how something turned out, our brain literally rewrites history to make that outcome seem totally obvious and predictable. It's that I knew it all along feeling. And when you put resulting and hindsight bias together, it becomes almost impossible to learn from our experiences because we end up judging our past selves with information they couldn't have possibly had at the time. This quote from the book just cuts right through all the noise. It is the perfect, undeniable example. A good outcome, getting home in one piece, doesn't magically transform the terrible decision to drive drunk into a good one. We all get this in extreme cases, but for some reason, we totally fail to apply that same exact logic to our everyday decisions, in our jobs, our finances, and our relationships. All right, section 4, how to think in bets. So we've diagnosed the problem. Our brains are basically hardwired for these mental shortcuts. But the good news is there are some really practical strategies we can use to overcome them and start building a better decision-making process. This simple two-word question is maybe the most powerful tool in the entire book. Now, you don't have to actually say it out loud to somebody, but just asking it inside your own head before you state a belief or make a choice, it works like a mental circuit breaker. It forces you to stop and ask yourself, wait a minute, how sure am I really? Am I actually willing to put something on the line for this belief? So what's actually happening in your brain here? Well, psychologically, wanna bet is so powerful because it shifts you from what the psychologist Daniel Kahneman calls System 1 thinking, which is fast, intuitive, emotional, to System 2 thinking, which is slow, analytical, and much more rational. But it also does something else really important. It forces a moment of what you might call intellectual humility. By asking if you'd risk something on your belief, you have to confront the very real possibility of being wrong, which makes you check your own ideas way more carefully. And this all leads to a simple, repeatable process for making better decisions. First, just get comfortable with uncertainty. Admitting I'm not sure isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually the very first step toward being accurate. Second, try to think in probabilities, not in black and white certainties. So instead of thinking this will happen, you think there's maybe a 70% chance this will happen. Third, and this is huge, judge your decisions on the quality of your process, not the result. And finally, use every outcome, good and bad, as feedback to make your beliefs and your process just a little bit better for the next time around. Okay, section 5, winning the long game. Because look, this isn't about winning every single hand. It's about building a process that makes sure you come out ahead over the long term. And this is that learning loop in action. An outcome, any outcome at all, is just feedback. So instead of just reacting to it emotionally, I won, I'm a genius, or I lost, I'm an idiot, you use it to update your beliefs about the world. This creates this incredibly powerful cycle where every single experience, whether it's a win or a loss, makes you a slightly smarter decision maker for the next bet you have to make. So, how do you actually analyze an outcome the right way? Well, you have to untangle the skill from the luck. When things go great, don't just pat yourself on the back. Ask, did I have a good process here? And where did I get a little lucky? And when things go badly, don't just throw your hands up and blame bad luck. Ask, okay, what part of this was actually in my control? What could my process have missed? That is where the real learning happens. And the payoff for all this work is just huge. When you stop beating yourself up for bad results that came from good, well-thought-out decisions, you develop a real sense of self-compassion. You learn way faster from your experiences because you're finally analyzing them honestly. And because your process is always getting a little bit better, your long-term results are inevitably going to improve. You're finally off that emotional roller coaster that's tied to every single win and loss. So let's bring it all the way back home. Armed with this new way of thinking, how do we see that infamous Super Bowl call now? Was it really the dumbest call in history, or was it a calculated high-probability bet that just happened to run into that tiny 2% chance of a total disaster? The answer seems a whole lot clearer now, doesn't it? So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Go back to that worst decision you thought of a few minutes ago. Can you look at it again now, not as a bad decision, but just as a bet? Was it actually a pretty good bet that just ran into some bad luck? Because learning to separate the quality of your process from the quality of the outcome, well, that's where the real learning and the real power of this idea truly begins.
If there's one idea to take from this book, it's this: a good decision does not guarantee a good result. and a bad result does not always mean a bad decision. That's hard to accept because we like control. We like the idea that if we do everything right, things will work out. But reality is messier. There's luck, there's uncertainty, there's randomness we can't control. And when we ignore that, we fall into a dangerous trap. We blame ourselves for outcomes we couldn't control, and we trust decisions that were actually just lucky. That's how bad thinking becomes a habit. But once you start thinking in bets, something changes. You stop asking, did this work? And you start asking, was this a good decision based on what I knew at the time? That shift is powerful because it separates your thinking from the outcome. It helps you improve your process instead of chasing perfect results. And over time, that's what actually leads to better decisions. If this made you rethink how you judge your choices, like the video, subscribe to Bookworm, and stay curious because life isn't about being right every time. It's about making better bets